All right, we're beginning Unit 2 on the Christian world, and we're going to explore how the teachings of Jesus and how the early Christians appropriated classical thought. What did they reject? What did they use? How did they formulate new answers to these questions of order that we discussed in the classical period? And in this first lecture, we're going to discuss the intellectual world of Jesus. What philosophical influences were around that Jesus was addressing, and especially the apostles such as Paul were addressing, and what influence did that have on early Christianity? So a couple of things I want the student to get out of this lecture. I want the student to be able to describe how classical ideas influenced the development of Christianity, and I want the student to discuss the other side of that coin, how Christianity challenged these classical ideas. And we have to remember that the world of Jesus was this confluence of three different streams of thought. We have the Greek philosophical tradition that was through Alexander the Great and his program of Hellenism had swept across Palestine and was alive and well in Jesus' day. We have streams of Roman thought and opinions on order and government and things like that. And we have the world of Jewish thought, from which our main source is the Old Testament. All three of these contexts were active in Jesus' day. And when Jesus taught the people in Palestine, in Jerusalem, these were people profoundly influenced by Greek, Roman, and Jewish thought. And Jesus was speaking to all three of those worlds at the same time. So we're going to start with the Greek world. And to review a little bit, in ancient Greece, the world of Homer, there was this belief that there was no order to society, that everything was at the whim of the gods. The Pythagoreans theorized that numbers and ideas can be an organizing principle for our world. Plato ordered the world around us in reference to reason, or the world of ideas. Aristotle tried to advance a different approach by which we look at substances and the physical world. Different people sought different answers in how to order one's personal life. The Gnostics wanted to transcend the material. Epicureans wanted to embrace pleasure, and Stoics wanted to deny pleasure. Art in the Greek world was a swing from idealism to this humanistic realism. And all of these ideas were present in the first century throughout the Roman Empire, but in particular in Palestine. The second context within which Jesus spoke was a Roman context. The Roman world's version of order had more to do with governing the state than these abstract ideas. And Rome offered a series of answers to how does one order the state. Initially, they set up a monarchy. The monarchy did not work well, gave way to a representative republic. But then the empire got so large and so broad, it was not able to be governed effectively through a republic, and you needed an emperor to rule over an empire. And shortly before the first century, we had the emergence of the Roman Empire. Romans had very firm convictions on how to rule people. And when Jesus was born into Palestine, it was under Roman control. So Jesus not only was speaking into the Greek world, he was speaking into the Roman world. And the third stream of thought that influences the world in which Jesus lived was a Jewish stream of thought. Jewish thought developed separately from the classical world. That's why we didn't discuss it as part of the classical world. But we've already discussed ways in which, opportunities in which we think that the Jewish world may have had an influence on the the Greek world. There is this theory that Plato and maybe Isaiah, maybe bumped into the world of Isaiah and learned Jewish notions of the world ordered according to the will of God, through commandments, through sacrifices and rituals, through a priesthood. That is how the Jews ordered their world in relationship to the Tanakh, the writings of Moses, the poetries and the histories that we find in the Old Testament. Admittedly, this is the world that is most immediate to the teachings of Jesus. Jesus went as a Jew to Jews, and he sets up this trajectory with the various commissions he gives his apostles. The first commission was to go only to Jews, and then the Great Commission was go to the ends of the earth. Paul, in his writings, sets up this trajectory where he first goes to the synagogue and then to the Gentiles, the gospel first for the Jew. So the Jewish context is most immediate and is not necessarily the one that we're going to focus the most on, fortunately or unfortunately, because the Jewish world is also the one that's most different from our own context. We, as 21st century Americans, fall within the Western classical tradition that was molded by both Greek and Roman ideas. The Jewish world did not exert as immediate of an influence on our world. So when we look at how we live our Christian life in light of our various philosophical systems, to a certain extent, Greek and Roman systems of thought are more relevant to us. But by no means is that intended to diminish the importance of Jewish thought to Jesus' preaching. Obviously, that would be absurd. Let me demonstrate the influence of Greek thought on the ministry of Jesus and the apostles through a discussion of Gnosticism. We've already discussed Gnostic attitudes, this idea that this Platonic idea that the material is bad, spiritual is good, and we must transcend the material in order to come in contact with the divine. And it sounds Christian-ish. There's something there that resonates well with Christianity, but when we take a closer look, it's incompatible with the Christian way of understanding the world, because we believe God created the physical world. He created the physical world good, and it is not inherently evil. It may be corrupted, but its value is not destroyed in the fall. And this philosophical system was very influential in the first century. But there's a debate over that. There's a popular debate over whether the New Testament writers portrayed Jesus as divine or spiritual because they were influenced by Gnostic thought. Some people view Christianity as a Jewish expression of Gnosticism and not something that has value in and of itself. Some evangelicals try and argue against this idea that the New Testament writers were influenced by Gnosticism by trying to claim that Gnosticism was not an influential movement to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th centuries. While it was undoubtedly more popular in later centuries, I don't think we can make the claim that it was not an influential movement in the 1st century. I think it did. Nor do I think that we have to admit that the New Testament writers were somehow influenced by Gnosticism, but there are some passages that have this Gnostic flavor to it, not because they were influenced by it, but in my opinion, they were addressing Gnosticism. They were trying to distinguish Jesus' teaching from Gnostic teaching. And one of these passages is in Colossians chapter 1, and let me read you a portion of this. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, in Jesus, and through Jesus to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Here we see two realms of things. We have earthly things and we have heavenly things. And Paul says in Colossians that both categories of stuff came through Jesus. Okay, so both have value. And both categories of stuff are being reconciled to Jesus. This explicitly eliminates a Gnostic view of the world. You cannot say that material things are inherently bad if A, Christ created them and created them good, and B, if Christ's work on the cross reconciles the material to himself. There's obviously some value in material objects. Another passage that demonstrates the influence, maybe not of Gnostic thought, but another Hellenistic idea is this quote in 1 Corinthians 15, if I fought wild beasts in Ephesus with no more than human hopes, what have I gained if the dead are not raised? Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. And this is a quote from an Epicurean philosopher. It is not demonstrating that Paul was influenced by Epicureanism, but that he recognized its existence in the intellectual world of Jesus and is addressing it. It is not just about eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. Paul is saying that death is not the end of us. We will be raised, and thereby addresses the Epicurean philosophy and undercuts it. So I don't think it is a useful approach, which has been used by some thinkers I respect, guys like Ronald Nash and such, that go to great lengths to say, oh no, the New Testament writers weren't influenced by anything. I don't think they were influenced by Greek thought as much as they addressed Greek thought. So it should not surprise us that Greek thought does appear in our scriptures, but not as something that Paul or any of the other writers explicitly affirms. But to try and, postpone the influence of these ideas in order to preserve the neutrality of the gospel writers, I don't think that's necessary either. Hey, here's another biblical quote that directly applies to a Greek philosophy. John chapter 10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. This is not stoic, ascetic detachment. Jesus is saying that he is here in order to make pleasure possible, in order to help you enjoy the physical world around you, as much as the heavenly world in the next phase of existence. This is not a complete rejection of all things material. A unique application of Gnostic thought to theology is found in a belief called Docetism. Docetism is the belief that Jesus only seemed human. If the New Testament writers were influenced by Gnosticism, then we can expect that they would hold to a docetic view of Jesus. If the material is literally evil, then Jesus could not have taken on material or flesh. Docetism gives the Gnostic Christian way out to say that, well, he wasn't literally flesh, he only seemed to be flesh. Because according to the Gnostic worldview, Jesus cannot be a material thing. But when we see the testimony of the scriptures, the apostles did not believe that Jesus only seemed to be physical, seemed to be a material. In 1 John chapter 4, it says, by this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus has come in the flesh is from God. Did not seem to come in the flesh, but actually came in the flesh. Then we have the story of the doubting Thomas in John chapter 20, where Thomas wondered if that was really Jesus. And Jesus confirmed his identity by having Thomas physically touch him. Put your finger here, see my hands. Put out your hand and place it at my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe. And Thomas answered, my Lord, my God. In other words, he actually touched him, and it was proven to him. Jesus, according to the apostles, did not just seem to be human. He was actually physical. So when we look at the intellectual world of Jesus, we see these Roman streams of thought. We see these Greek streams of thought. We see these Jewish streams of thought. And they combine to form a unique culture into which Jesus and the apostles address themselves. Now, so far what we've seen is Jesus and the apostles drawing lines of separation between philosophical approaches and Christian approaches. In our next section, we're going to look at the influence of Greek thought and philosophy had on some of the early Christians and how these Christians dealt with classical thought.